to do. But for this opening session, I am really thrilled to welcome Rabbi Jeremy Morrison. And Rabbi Jeremy is, can I still say new? Maybe not anymore. Okay, the new-ish.
Fair enough.
Repurposed rabbi at Congregation Shomrei Torah. Hang on, I just want to tell you just a couple of biography points. But Rabbi Jeremy, I hope you'll tell us more. Um, Besides being the rabbi at Congregation Shomrei Torah in Santa Rosa, Rabbi Jeremy has a Ph.D. in Bible and Ancient Near East from Brandeis University and is just a very interesting thinker and delightful person. And I think I'm brave enough to call a new friend. Rabbi
Appreciate
Jeremy, welcome.
I appreciate it and thank you, Rabbi, for welcoming me and inviting all of us to participate in this tikkun. Um, I like to keep saying I'm new because it allows me to continue to make mistakes and find, figure things out, etc. But it's been a remarkable period of time these last 10 months or so to be here in Santa Rosa, and it's been great to meet you and to spend a little time together. And I look forward to talking together more in the time ahead. You said people get a break. Should we give people a little break, or what's the plan?
I think that obviously people should take care of themselves tonight and do what they need to do. But I think we'll
Okay.
take a break, our first break after your session.
Okay, great. Um, so um, I titled this session Sacred Risk, Faith, Courage, and Covenant in Biblical Texts because of a simple kind of observation that occurred to me, particularly after I reread the Book of Ruth, is that so many stories within the Bible, within the Tanakh, are about risk and reward within a covenantal context. And it might be like the major theme of our narratives across the entire Bible. Characters are always being challenged to commit to covenants, uh, to take a risk on things they don't know. And if they run from that risk or taking that risk, usually something bad might happen to them. But generally, taking a risk and committing to covenant results in reward. And Reb, Erwin, uh, I took note of your references to the first chapter of the Book of Ruth in particular, and the notion you spoke about promises being made in the context of marriage, if I captured that correctly. I think it's really helpful to think about marriage as an example of the risk reward involved in covenant making, and to recognize that when we make covenants, we are simultaneously saying yes as we're also saying no. And the classic example is marriage because you're committing to someone. And in that instance, you're also saying no to all the other options that you have uh, in terms of choosing a partner. That too is the dynamic of committing to covenant within the Bible itself. And so, what I wanted to do tonight, rather briefly, is to look at three of these stories of risk and reward within the formation of covenant that punctuate our liturgical year. Um, we're going to look at the story of the Akedah, of the binding of Isaac, which certainly kind of, in one respect, kicks off our liturgical year, or the new year, I should say. Then I want us to take a quick look at some scenes, one or two scenes from the story of the Exodus, which is as we all know, associated with Passover, before turning to the Book of Ruth itself. Originally, I was going to do Ruth and then the other two, but since I kind of want to work our way to that, and since this is the first session, I figure Ruth can then serve as a bridge to what comes after this. So one of the ways in which I want us to look at these three stories is through that prism of risk and reward. Um, and what does covenant mean within each of these stories? The second way I want us to consider these stories as we go along is a way of exploring the relationship between narratives and laws in the Bible to see that, and a way I recommend reading our stories and our laws as clarifying complements for each other. That stories come to clarify laws, and laws come to clarify stories. And so, for each of these stories, I want us to look at the legal backdrop that's behind them and see how an exploration of that legal backdrop helps to clarify the meaning of the narrative itself. A clear example is the story of Ruth, which at its base is a narrative about levirate marriage, and we'll talk a little bit about that. In a sense, it's an example of a kind of law being practiced. And here's a story about a kind of law. The story happily goes far beyond that. Otherwise, I think it wouldn't be much of an interesting story. But the same is true with the Akedah and also the stories that we read of the Exodus. Um, the last thing I'll say is it wasn't my choice, though I'm honored to be doing this right now, to be the only option you have at this hour of the tikkun. And so, here we are talking about risk and reward and choice and so forth. I want to suggest to you that I won't. If you want to turn it off now, like I have nothing else planned for this hour, and we haven't offered you any other choices. So if you want to choose to just go, I like the references to cheesecake that have occurred so far this night. If you want to spend this 45 minutes or so just, eating cheesecake, go do it. But otherwise, we're going to continue. And I'm hoping that as we go, I'm going to ask people to read. And I'd also like to ask for you to, if we can, I know we're a fairly large group, but I think we'll be able to do a little bit of interaction, specifically or particularly if you could use the reaction button and put up a hand. And so I'm going to ask some questions and we can have a conversation. Yes, Amy, you should eat your dinner during this session. So I'm going to put into the chat a link to the text I'm using, and I'm going to share my screen with the text. And for starters, I'd like someone to volunteer, if they would, to read the story of the Akedah. So let me just share my screen. And where is it? Here it is. Good. Okay. I hope everyone could see this. Tish, could you please read?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi Jeremy. And you'll pardon my voice, I just have that kind of a voice.
You sound great.
This was the first Torah portion I read 10 days after I went to the mikveh.
Oh, great. All right.
But
Or
I will
not.
read it.
I don't know.
Oh, it was great.
Okay.
But I will read it in English.
All right.
Sometime afterward, God put Abraham to the test, saying to him, Abraham. He answered, Here I am. Take your son, your favored one, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the heights that I will point out to you. So early next morning, Abraham saddled his donkey and took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. He split the wood for the burnt offering, and he set out for the place of which God had told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his servants, You stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go up there. We will worship, and we will return to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and put it on his son Isaac. He himself took the firestone and the knife, and the 2 walked off together. Then Isaac said to his father Abraham, Father, and he answered, Yes, my son. And he said, Here are the firestone and the wood, but where is the sheep for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, It is God who will see to the sheep for this burnt offering, my son. And the two of them walked on together. They arrived at the place of which God had told him. Abraham built an altar there. He laid out the wood. He bound his son Isaac. He laid him on the altar on top of the wood. And Abraham picked up the knife to slay his son. Then an angel of God called to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham!" And he answered, "Here I am." "Do not raise your hand against the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your favored one, from me." When Abraham looked up, his eye fell upon a ram caught in the thicket by its thorns. So Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering in place of his son. And Abraham named the site Adonai Yireh, whence the present saying, "On God's mount there is vision."
Great. Thank you so much, Tish. Just to recognize a couple of things, the story that we have in the Torah continues. God calls to Abraham a second time and offers him a blessing. And then the chapter concludes with essentially Abraham coming down from the mountain with his two servants, and we continue on from there. This is considered, these 14 verses are considered like the original story itself. And so we could certainly spend almost this entire session or more talking about this. This sounds actually an opportunity for you to use your reaction buttons. I'm wondering who finds this story troubling. And if I don't know what you, okay, good. And I assume that Tish, that the raised hand there means yes, you find it troubling. Good. Does anyone want to describe why it's troubling? Can I ask someone to? Yes, I like that, Erwin. Why is it troubling? Marcia.
It's probably one of the most troubling stories we have. I mean, a God that asks his beloved son to murder his beloved son. How could that not be troubling? I mean, what's the question is, I guess, what I would throw back to you. How could this not be troubling?
Okay. Okay, good. I want to, I actually find, I know our first or even, multiple reactions to this story is, uh, is that it's a traumatic story, as opposed to a dramatic story. I do think though that once we look a little bit more at like the legal backdrop to it, it becomes less, awful. It's certainly awful in our minds. How do we know it's not a bad story? How do we know this is actually a good story within the terms of the Bible? How do we know this is a good story?
It has a Hollywood ending.
I don't know who said that. Was that you, Marcia, again? Or someone else?
It was not me.
Okay. Oh, Rita.
Now I lost the whole darn video. Uh, oh, it's a miracle because of the angel and the ram. The
Okay,
ram
good.
stuck it, and also miracle because of the thicket.
Uh-huh. Okay. The word miracle, what do you mean by that?
That just in the nick of time
Uh-huh.
appearance.
Got it. Good. Did anything, I know everyone's feeling deeply about the feelings, of, well, first we generally start thinking about Abraham being a madman, and we think about the trauma for Isaac being exposed on that pile of wood, right? And his father raising a knife to him. I think a good guideline for reading biblical narratives are to begin with is to explore first and foremost what was important to the writers, and before we explore what's important to us. So the writers, if they wanted to write a story about the fear of Isaac or the trauma of this story, they would have put those details in. And we know that, of course, there are generations of there's a huge tradition of asking the kinds of questions that we have about the text. But the text itself is I use this, I think, as a pun, wholly positive. It's wholly positive. Why is it wholly positive? One answer is, well, at the other end, the guy gets a blessing for this action that he takes. I also want to just point out, I want to read what I call a clarifying complement to this story, which I think helps understand the actions that Abraham helps us understand the actions that Abraham took in the story. Does someone mind reading 1b, the clarifying complement?
I can read it.
Please.
Every first issue of the womb is mine, from all your livestock that drop a male as firstling, whether cattle or sheep. But the firstling of a donkey you shall redeem with a sheep. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck, and you must redeem every male firstborn among your children. None shall appear before me empty-handed.
Great, thank you. I think that was, oh, good. Yeah, it was Carolyn. I thought so. Uh, so what is this law saying about Abraham's actions? How does it clarify our narrative? What's Abraham doing?
He's
He's,
he's
yeah,
following the
go ahead,
law.
Tish.
He's following
What?
the law.
Yeah, he's fulfilling the law.
Yeah, Isaac is his firstborn.
Exactly. And in fact, Isaac is the first issue of Sarah's womb. Um, and and we know too that child sacrifice was prevalent in the ancient Near East. So one reason why this story kind of tips us off to that prevalence is when God says, "Go sacrifice your son," right up at the top of this story, Abraham doesn't respond. I don't know how to say this polite. I'm just going to say WTF. Okay, like Abraham does not express any surprise that this would be something that he was supposed to do. And elsewhere in the Bible, we have some textual evidence that they did child sacrifice back then. And by the end of the story, I think it was Rita who spoke about the notion of this miracle. Here's the sheep, right? Here's the sheep in the caught by its horns in a thicket, and that might be the purpose of this story, to sort of say, friends, you no longer have to sacrifice your sons to redeem them. Like, to redeem your sons, all you need to do is offer me a sheep instead. That could be the purpose of this story, a kind of substitution for stop killing the boys, give me a sheep, and I'll be happy with that. But also, just to return before we're about to move to the next series of stories, to recognize that this is a story that takes the notion of risk and reward to its most extreme. Like I think about, like, what do you call this ax, like if you have an X and Y axis with risk and reward on it. This is like highest risk. I'm gonna have to kill my son, and greatest reward is in this upper quadrant, so to speak. And there's drama to this. So, and recognize that by Abraham taking this great risk, and in the covenantal relationship that he has with God, he's going to get tremendous reward. And he doesn't shrink or walk away from the opportunity to take the risk. Marcia, you have your hand up. Oh, you're muted.
It's a different Marcia. Marcia.
It's Marcia Connell.
Marcia Connell, yeah.
Yes. What do we think it means to be redeeming the sons?
Yeah, that's a perfect word for the end of this of to think about the notion of redemption at the for the story of Ruth. The best way I can speak to it, Marcia, is to think about the risk when we used to, if you're, or we still have the opportunity to, uh, when you buy a can of Coke, you can recycle, like you can bring it back and get 5 cents back. So
Yeah.
like you spend let's just pretend you spend $1, right? 95 cents of that dollar is for the Coke, 5 cents is for the can. And if you return the can, you get your 5 cents back. The way this works in the Bible is similarly that the people belong to God. And in this case, the firstborn of every womb belongs to God, and you have to do something to hold on to it, to get it to be yours. The entire story of the Exodus is one of God like has lent to Pharaoh God's people and then redeems them and gets them back.
Yeah,
So
redemption is used a lot in talking about that situation also. And
exactly.
I've been questioning, what are we talking about?
Yes, what are we talking about? And the notion of being a redeemer applies to Boaz in our story in the Book of Ruth. So I want to move forward because I'm cognizant of time. Let's move from the story that we read at Rosh Hashanah to now two scenes from the story of the Exodus, very beloved scenes, I think, very cool scenes. And let's take a look at these in terms of risk and reward. So, could someone read Exodus 1:15 through 21, please?
I think Rabbi Shifra should read this one.
That must happen to her frequently when this story comes up, I guess.
Hang on, I'm getting my video on here.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, okay.
Yes, yes,
I see.
yes.
The king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other Puah, saying, when you deliver the Hebrew women, look at the birth stool. If it is a boy, kill him. If it is a girl, let her live. The midwives, fearing God, did not do as the king of Egypt had told them. They let the boys live and did civil disobedience. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and said to them, why have you done this thing, letting the boys live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They are vigorous. Before the midwife can come to them, they have given birth. And God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and increased greatly, and God established households for the midwives because they feared God.
Great. I think you put two words into this story that aren't there. What did you say?
I said they did civil disobedience.
All right, good. Yeah, so this story is often considered an ancient story of civil disobedience. While we're talking about civil disobedience, it's even more trenchant, I'd say, in this other little short scene from the same from the same story. This is if you there's that's one form of civil disobedience. This is another example of civil disobedience. Could someone read this little bit and then we can talk about them together? Come on, this is a good one.
I can read.
Thank you.
Susan. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the Nile while her maidens walked along the Nile. She spied the basket among the reeds and sent her handmaid to fetch it. When she opened it, she saw that it was a child, a boy crying. She took pity on it and said, this must be a Hebrew child. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get a Hebrew nurse to suckle the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter answered, yes. So the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child and nurse it for me, and I will pay your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who made him her.
I think, oh no, oh no, yeah,
It's
good.
just a little bit. Her son.
Uh-huh.
He named him Moses, explaining, I drew him out of the water.
Okay, great. All right. So, um, how are these scenes of civil disobedience? And what is and also what is the relationship between risk and reward? Zoom silence is dark and dense.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
Rabbi. Yeah.
I guess one thing I'd like to say is that in many ways, the relationship is life and death.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Good.
we're talking about the birthing of children
Mhm.
and the midwives saying, we can't do that. Our lives are based on bringing more life into the world. We can't be taking life away in this way. And and their own lives could well have been at risk in doing what they did, which is why this is a sort of a subterfuge sort of civil disobedience. It's not a public go and chain yourself to something. Um, it's an act of defiance for the sake of life,
Uh-huh.
um, just in whatever, using the tools that they had.
Great. A lot of really interesting comments that the which is a theme for so many of our stories about women in the Bible, right? Using what they have at hand to actually alter the course of the whole God's plan for God's people, right? And these are like the most intimate moments in a life or multiple lives, giving birth, and it's a domestic moment as well, I imagine. Um, uh, and you said something really interesting about the notion of life and death. Were they to do what the law is, the civil law, you use the word civil disobedience, so against the civil law, they would be not only obviously killing young children, they would be denying something about them, killing something in themselves, right? As folks, as these midwives, right? Like a total denial of their essence, were they to follow Pharaoh's law. Iren.
I'm just trying to thinking along the terms of the risk and reward, not the whole
Yes.
heartfelt saving a child and all of that. I
Uh,
mean, really, we're following the law of a pharaoh
yes.
versus a god,
Good.
or our God. And
Mhm.
so we're basically, if you're hedging your bets here, what reward are we going to get for what like power are we like pleasing? Like, are we going to get a bigger reward from, I don't know, Adonai or Pharaoh if we could see him as like the other powerful figurehead? I think we're making a choice here.
Great.
Not to talk about the whole moral, wonderful thing about saving a baby and it being immoral and all of that, but like if we're talking about risk and reward,
Yes.
who's the authority figure?
Yeah, great. And there's a law that one law, one set of one body of law, and that lawgiver, God, trumps the law, this lawgiver. Pharaoh is also a god for the Egyptians. Um, but the midwives understand that there's a higher, like the risk is great, but the rewards even greater by following we'll call it the higher law of this God versus that God, Pharaoh. Dorothy. Yeah, there you go. Oh, yeah, good.
Okay, I did it. Um, I feel so strongly, having been a parent, what a risk every moment is. Whether we're talking about, a God or being told to kill our favorite son, But we really, as parents, have to take a risk that we're making the right move. It always has been an issue. What principle are we going to use? Am I going to use? And I'm not really sure how to make this fit with the story of the Aikida. But it's kind of, somebody once said this, that everything belongs to God. So you want to see what is the highest ethical way of taking your risk as a parent.
Yeah,
I keep going back to that, and if you could fit that in, that would be what I want to do.
Well, actually, Dorothy, what you're pointing to is kind of the larger question I'd like us to you know entertain and perhaps derive from our study of these texts ultimately, which is like we're reading these stories about risk and reward in committing to covenant on a day when we are recommitting to a covenant. And I mean, that's the purpose of every single holiday of ours. It's also a day, this is, apropos to what we're reading here in terms of the law. Uh, we're also, this is the holiday in which we are celebrating the giving of our law, and the notion of its power in our lives. And I actually think as we keep going, there's some new, like, I don't think any one of us, I hope not, because then we truly would think we're maniacs, have felt the calling to bring our children up to the mountain and offer them up for a sacrifice. There's something unreal about that. Whereas this story, which Schiffer nicely put in these two words that they are not in the text, civil disobedience, this whole notion of how do we square our own covenantal commitments as Jews with civil law. I think that's a pretty big question for us presently. So, and across now, Dorothy, you're challenging me to put into this study a comment you brought up about how we make parental choices, right? I'll
And there's
just
a risk.
Oh, of course, it's a big risk. And I think also in a metaphorical sense, just to double back to the story we read before, in a metaphorical sense, we're often sacrificing our children for our own ideals, and not in the service, not in a way that's helpful to them. But that's a highly like contemporary read on that. Rita, give me 1 second, and I'm going to call on you. I do want to point out, like, there's this thing with the midwives. What is the daughter of Pharaoh doing? I mean, completely disobeying civil law, and it's her father's law that she's disobeying. Rita, what did you want to say? You need,
I wanted to thank you, Dorothy, for what you said about how every moment, especially as a parent, is a risk. And it made me think that every moment is a risk, and every moment is a gift and a reward. And to use that word again, a miracle. I don't know if that links up with exactly where we're at, Rabbi, but I just wanted to say that was really a powerful look into motherhood and parenthood.
great, great. Um, I want to add another clarifying complement to this story that I hadn't really thought about before I started preparing for this evening. Could someone read Deuteronomy 17:14 through 18, please? And then we're going to get to Ruth. I know I'd be in trouble if I didn't get to Ruth.
I can read.
Okay.
If after you have entered the land that the Eternal your God has assigned to you, and taken possession of it and settled in it, you decide, I will set a king over me, as do all the nations about me. You shall be free to set a king over yourself, one chosen by the Eternal your God. Be sure to set as king over yourself one of your own people. You must not set a foreigner over you, one who is not your fellow Israelite. Moreover, he shall not keep many horses or send people back to Egypt to add to his horses, since God has warned you, you must not go back that way again. And he shall not have many wives, lest his heart go astray, nor shall he amass silver and gold to excess. When he is seated on his royal throne, he shall have a copy of this teaching, written for him on a scroll by the Levitical priests.
Great.
That's
That's it. Thank you.
it. That's weird.
Why is it weird?
I don't know. I mean, I'm waiting to hear how you connect this up.
Okay. I've said this at Torah study at CST, like in some ways I wish we would and many of you are we haven't met one another and we're barely meeting tonight. So please take what I'm about to say as I mean it, which is like sometimes I wish I could rip up the Bible and collate it into its different genres, like put all its legal texts in one pile, put all its narratives in another pile, put all of its prophetic texts in another pile, it's poetry, it's Psalms over here, because we have a tendency to read the Bible linearly, like starting at page 1 through page 1,000. And I actually think the way the Bible is kind of set up is like they were thinking about these piles next to each other. And so if you read what's interesting about this text in particular, it's very ambivalent about kingship. And the message within the Deuteronomic law code is, guys, I know you might want to have a king because everyone else has a king, but notice what kings can do. Notice this is why I'm bringing it to this pairing tonight is like, don't you remember what Pharaoh said? Like notice how those kings, those emperors act, and they can do some crazy stuff like telling you to kill your firstborn. But you guys, I know, are going to want one of them because, again, that's normative. And so if you're going to want one of them, I want you to make sure this is the most interesting part of this text is verse 18. I really want you, this is one of the best, most interesting texts in Deuteronomy. What does verse 18 turn the king into? What's the life of a king in verse 18? Is it, whoring and hunting and taxation and all that stuff and warring? No, what's a king supposed to be according to verse 18?
A student.
Exactly. And a student of what, Dorothy?
A student of the right thing to do.
Well, even more, a student of
law.
of Deuteronomy. Like we want the king to be ruled by these laws, and thus, if the king and the king might not have even been able to read, which is why Levitical priests had to read to the king, and thus that will make sure that the king doesn't go beyond, stays on the straight and narrow. So. I wonder if these stories are in some respect a reflection of this ambivalence about kingship. The last thing I want to point out, just to now before I turn to Ruth, it's really interesting who the actors of this civil disobedience are. If you look to, we already know the daughter of Pharaoh is not an Israelite. In the first of these stories, this phrase, the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives. This could be the midwives to the Hebrews, which means it could either be these midwives are Israelite, or it could be Egyptian women who are midwives for the Israelites. And so it's an interesting recognition or idea that some of the major actors throughout the entire Exodus narrative are not Israelite women. Moses' wife is not an Israelite woman. And the midwife and the daughter of Pharaoh are non-Israelites taking actions that result in the covenanting that happens ultimately in this story. Which now brings us to Ruth, which focuses on a non-Israelite woman covenanting with uh, the Israelite God and the Israelite people, and taking tremendous risk in doing that. So let's for our remaining time, we're going to now turn to the first chapter of Ruth, and it was chanted beautifully, not before. Now I just would like someone to read this text, please.
I'll
One more
read it.
reader. Yeah,
Sure, I'll read it.
great.
She's no,
Yeah.
wait.
Oh.
Okay. She started out with her daughters-in-law to return from the country of Moab. For in the country of Moab she had heard that God had taken note of the people of Israel and given them food. Accompanied by her two daughters-in-laws, she left the place where she had been living, and they set out on the road back to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her two daughters-in-laws, "Turn back, each of you, to your mother's house, to her mother's house. May God deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May God grant that each of you find security in the house of a husband." And she kissed them farewell. They broke into weeping and said to her, "No, we will return with you to your people." But Naomi replied, "Turn back, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Have I any more sons in my body who might be husbands for you? Turn back, my daughters, for I am too old to be married. Even if I thought there was hope for me, even if I were married tonight and also bore sons, should you wait for them to grow up? Should you on their account debar yourselves from marriage? Oh no, my daughters, my lot is far more bitter than yours, for God's hand has struck out against me." They broke into weeping again, and Oprah kissed her mother-in-law farewell. But Ruth clung to her, so she said, "See, your sister-in-law has returned to her people and her gods. Go follow your sister-in-law." But Ruth replied, "Do not urge me to leave you, to turn back and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there be buried. Thus and more may God do to me, if anything but death parts me from you." When Naomi saw how determined she was to go with her, she ceased to argue with her, and the two went on until they reached Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole city buzzed with excitement over them. And the women said, "Can this be Naomi?"
I love after this incredible scene that we all dig, we all love all this promising, this very dramatic thing. The last lines of this is so like, oh, when they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole city buzzed with excitement over them. There's something very like, back to like um it's like wonderfully, if that was so elevated, this is so much like back to just the gossipiness of a small town, and when people arrive and oh, look at, oh my goodness, could this be Naomi? Anyway, that just struck me now. But I would like to now really dig into this moment of pledge, and what are the risks that both Ruth and Naomi are taking in this moment.
Whether or not they'll marry again?
Could I see who is speaking? I don't know if I
Oh,
can see that.
Julia.
Oh, great. Okay. Um, okay. So, Julia, say that again, please.
They're taking the risk of will they marry again? Will they have families? Will they have their own children?
Okay, that almost is like the I think like you're naming the overarching existential question, right? Like what does the future
Right,
hold, right?
right.
And part of the choices they're making, it's almost like if they make these choices, will it result in new life for them, right? It's our story moves from a place of famine or actually left a place of famine, gone to a place where there's food, now coming back, and how things will turn out, especially after all this incredibly um, awful stuff had happened to them in the outside of the land. Rita.
I think the risk Naomi and Ruth are taking is to have this very unconventional marriage between them.
Uh-huh.
Um, and speaking of that, a while back, I was really when there were moments of not only child sacrifice but animal sacrifice.
Mhm.
No, actually, that's not what I'm sorry. I scribbled some notes here. Um, when there was all this heterosexual marriage talk back a little ways, I kept wondering, what about polyamory? What about open relationships? What about non-monogamy? What about is singlehood, the choice to be single and to try to marry oneself? What about asexuality? Or what about those who do not want to be fruitful and multiply, which seems to be one of the central laws of of what should I say, Judaism? No, of the Torah. Um, so it seems that this Ruth Naomi thing is wildly transgressive. I love it.
I think all those questions are great. One, I've since I've moved to Northern California, I've learned from folks, and particularly on my staff, to use the word wonderings. Those are great wonderings. Those are really great wonderings. This story in particular isn't addressing those wonderings. I also want to challenge that this is not a story. This part of the story is not about marriage. This part is not about marriage. This is about an intergenerational relationship in which a mother, the relationship between essentially a mother and and this is where the risk piece of the risk comes, is around this adopting a daughter. Marcia, did you want to add something? Marcia Falk. You're muted. Oh,
Yeah, I know. I
okay,
was
good.
just trying to get
Okay.
to the right button.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, I don't mean to. I mean, all those theories are exciting, the ones that Rita just mentioned. And will it make me seem really old-fashioned and stuffy if I say they're very anachronistic, that I don't believe the authors of this text was really, oh God, you're all gonna hate me.
No, I
Is
actually, I think
everyone
I
gonna
think
hate me?
I
No,
wouldn't, Marcia, I don't, I think if you're focusing on, again, on this text is not addressing those questions,
but right. And for
period.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, but I didn't mean to, I wasn't, I really wasn't trying to, I love the speculation. I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
do.
no, of course. Uh,
Uh, erase all of that. What I really had wanted to say was um, the risk, it seems to me, the really great risk Ruth
mhm,
is taking is she's leaving everything behind. She's leaving her entire tribe behind.
mhm. Good.
She know that these Israelites, whoever they
Mhm.
are going to accept her, are that she's going to find a home there.
She doesn't know that.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what I meant. That was a
Yes.
rhetorical
Y-
question.
Yeah,
How does she know that? She doesn't.
right.
So that's where I think she's really brave. and putting all of her faith in this one relationship with her mother-in-law. And I think the author makes it really clear to us that she did not need to do this. Her sister or sister-in-law, Oprah,
Orpah. Yeah.
Orpah,
Yeah.
Orpah
Uh,
doesn't do that, and Naomi
yeah.
still praises her. She's made a legitimate choice. So I guess what Ruth has done is super duper brave
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
alone. Alone. She's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Rita, in terms of your wonderings about convention versus the unconventional, what Orpah does is conventional. Like Orpah has the normative response. Like, no way. Why, like, okay, my mother-in-law is saying, don't come with me. And okay, this is where the story begins to take a real turn because Orpah kind of is the one saying, all right, I get it. It makes no sense for me to take the risk to cross from Moab into Israel and tie my future with this person because of I'll even say the legal ramifications of doing that. Um, I really want to go. I know, and having used this text, that Ruth says one of the most beautiful things in the Bible. And the way Reb Irwin and others were referring to this text and singing about this kind of commitment. It's gorgeous and lovely. And it's effectively a legal formulation because what Ruth is saying, I am going to switch gods. Like Ruth is pledging herself to other gods, to other lands, and is essentially self-adopting herself, like taking on I will be your daughter. And I know you, Naomi, have so little legal standing when you return. Naomi's essentially disempowered because of the death of her husband and sons. And so this is a huge risk. Similarly, it's a huge risk for Naomi to take on the responsibility of Ruth, who comes with her without land, doesn't bring anything to the relationship. And so to recognize that as much as there's this incredible commitment happening on the emotional plane, or at least that's how we read it, there's also something huge happening it's like I'm going to close the door on all of my connections to family, to land, to protection, which women needed in this structure, and I'm going to risk it with you. And Naomi's saying is something similar. I know time is short, so I want to home in on one of the phrases that runs it's sort of like a through line of this whole story, which comes up in the first time in verse 1, in chapter 1, verse 8. You can read here. But Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, turn back, each of you, to her mother's house. May God deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. And we got to home in on this one word, which many of you know, and I underlined it in the Hebrew, which is the word chesed. And I think chesed is a key term for us to almost finish our conversation with tonight. What does chesed mean? It's a fairly untranslatable term, but give it a go.
Loving kindness.
Good. We often talk about loving kindness. What are another way to understand that term?
Compassion.
Okay, compassion. Yeah, I love all these warm. This is all warmth. It's good. It's good stuff. Another word is loyalty, and probably it means going beyond the strict letter of the law
That's right.
in terms of like you have obligations in the covenant that you have to fulfill. Chesed is going even beyond the obligation that you have to someone. And to bring this sort of to the end is to recognize that every single character is operating through a kind of chesed mentality. Like Ruth is expressing like a kind of going beyond in her commitment to Naomi. Naomi it expresses an incredible sense of like, okay, I'm going to take on this risk and go beyond. I don't need to bring you with me across this boundary, but I'll do that. And the character who actually balances Ruth's orientation or like this chesed paradigm, the ultimate character that expresses the greatest amount of chesed within the structures of the legal structures of the text is Boaz, who goes well beyond what he has to do. In fact, he doesn't have to do anything to protect Ruth and to marry Ruth. He has no legal obligation to do so. And yet he does that. And he's in two instances, the word chesed is used to describe his activities. I'm going to stop sharing.
Rabbi Jeremy,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay.
I'm always very excited to be in this story and to be reading it and to hear fresh takes on it. So grateful to you. And I also want to say, for those who have the energy to stay up until a 10:30 session, we're going to be doing the queer takes on Ruth and Naomi, because even though it's not a marriage, it's not a marriage. So we'll have a chance to explore like how we connect with the story, what we bring to it, and not just what it brings to us. So grateful to you. Thank you, Rabbi Jeremy, for bringing Shomrei Torah into this event tonight and for sharing your scholarship and your thoughts. So grateful. We're going to have just a few minutes of break for people to have a bio break or run and get some dairy treats or mock dairy treats. And then we'll come back. You'll have, there will be two breakout rooms to choose from. One is the Book of Ruth, Refructification and Renewal, and that's with Shoshana Firstman. And the other is In Ruth's Footsteps, Widowhood, Loss, Loneliness, and Renewal, and that's with Rabbi Diane Elliott. So go take a little break. When you come back to your computer, you'll see a choice, and then you can choose your own adventure. We're going to shut off the recording now.